Greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is doing well this evening. For a while now, I've been doing cryptid or dogman encounters in America, but we forget that there's something across the pond called Europe, and they have their own cryptids over there. So I did a little research, and I've got 2 cryptid encounters from Europe to share with you, and one little tale of folklore at the end. Before we get into those, I'd like to share some links with you. I'm a commercial-free channel, so I rely on my Patreon, PayPal, and merch link to keep this channel growing and going. Also, I have a channel just for creepypasta, voice acting, and fan fiction. If that's anything that you guys are into, follow that link in the description below and give some of those stories a listen. You might just like them. And with that, guys, let's get on with these encounters, shall we? Our first encounter of the evening. Now, I've never met a skinwalker, but in Norway we have something kind of like it. It does the same things as skinwalkers. We call it a Nokken. It's kind of a troll living in water, usually rivers and ponds. They are often pictured peeking their heads up from the surface to look after their victims. Because yes, they kill people. When they see someone, they run up from the water and transform into a beautiful white horse. When their victim sees the horse, they become attracted to it. They think it's so beautiful. They think it is in need and goes to help it, or simply just want to ride it. Either way, they climb on the horse's back, and then the victim sits comfortably. The horse jumps into the pond or river, drowning the victim. Another tactic is the Nokken plays on a violin. The victim becomes attracted and walks towards the sound. Then, when he or she is close enough, Nokken drags the victim down in the pond, drowning the victim. This creature is not a skinwalker, but I feel its tactics is kind of the same. Luring people towards them so they can kill them, or transforming into something or someone they love or know. I believe every folklore religion in the world has the same creatures, just different appearances. Like trolls in Norway, and Cyclops in Greece, and the Sphinx in Egypt, and Griffin in Europe. All folklore and technology. These creatures get scared away. But the skinwalker have had so many sightings because it's not afraid of technology, because it can transform into all animals. Nokken, for example, can only transform into a white horse. No one would have thought it is normal that a white horse is running around a pond all day. For all we know, we all might have met a skinwalker disguised as an animal. Our second encounter of the evening. I'd like to give an account of my encounter with an entity which seems to be sharing some of the skinwalker traits. I believe it is a skinwalker's European counterpart of sorts, so I presume you might be interested in hearing my story. It happened in Central Europe in late August, early September of 2011. The exact date escapes me. On a day that marks a very tragic event in my country's recent history, coincidence 1, I returned to work from a week-long vacation, only to discover there was a new girl in the office. She really turned my head, and the attraction seemed to be mutual. We started to socialize, and to my utter amusement, I uncovered that we shared a plethora of interests: astronomy, philosophy, hiking, science, fiction, music, video games, and what have you. So, on top of all the prevailing chemistry and enchantment, we clicked with each other from A to Z. She was a fresh university grad, still living with her parents in a small town some 20 miles north. Oftentimes I gave her a ride from work, and more often than that we hung out afterwards. Her hometown was rather small and uneventful, but the landscape around it was picturesque. Therefore, instead of spending our evenings in coffee shops and tea houses, we would simply drive to those wooded hills surrounding the town. There, sitting on a hilltop, we would eat pizza and sip juice, stargaze, and discuss Jupiter and its satellites. Usually, we went to the hills on the northwest side of town, but on the first couple of occasions, she chose to go southeast. This happened on our second or third date, a bare 10 minutes after the relationship had progressed a small step forward. Coincidence, too. It was dark and late already, and even though the first kiss was given and taken, she was still acting kinda shy. So I started our descent from the hill on a very dusty and bumpy unpaved road. I drove a rare sports car, which I took good care of, and since I didn't want to screw its underbelly up and live out the driver's nightmare of coming over a sturdy, sharp rock cutting through the exhaust pipe, fuel tank, and just like the iceberg that sunk the Titanic, or brakes, I was tootling pretty slow, crawling and zigzagging so as to avoid all of the pits and bumps. The area was well lit by the moon. I can't recall whether or not it was a full moon, but I'm certain it was in its gibbous phase at very least. I could see the surrounding trees just fine, and clearings were illuminated nicely. Then, through the windshield, I saw something at the far end of the larger clearing on the right side, just a few meters away from the tree line. First, I thought it was some tramp mounting a donkey in the act of bestiality. Come another second, and I assumed it was the other way around. It was actually the donkey mounting the guy. Now, the whole idea is grotesque on its own, but the fact that they both seemed to be somewhat crooked and twisted further intensified the bizarre and horrific absurd situation. I simply couldn't figure out what was actually transpiring over there. As we approached them from behind and almost leveled with them, I spotted what I thought were a pair of trousers loose and halfway down on the person's hips. And then, almost simultaneously with noticing the trousers, I realized there was no donkey. There was no second protagonist or whatever was happening there. All this time, I had been looking at one entity, one creature. I remember my feelings completely bewildered, in awe, but no fear. Although I was not scared, I could almost hear my soul screaming from deep down inside. Whatever was happening, I sensed it as an act against nature, against humanity, against the universe and God. Unnatural, inhuman, and most of all, ungodly. This sense of unholy wickedness and vileness from the creature was so overwhelming that it actually made me look away. A few more glances I gave were all very short and strained. It was big, probably about 7 to 8 feet tall. Its legs were bowed and crooked weirdly, and they were those saggy trousers hanging around the hips. It was leaning forward, its posture resembling the Leaning Tower, head start type, with a pair of very long arms unnaturally hovering above the ground. It did not move, but its posture and pose was so unnatural that I surmised we'd come upon it in the middle of its transformation. Then it turned its head our way. Its face was all shiny in the moonlight, almost silvery white or something, so I couldn't really see the features in Ultra HD. Yet I remember the fouling of moose-like antlers, an elongated moose-like face with human-like eyes and a vile grin. The latter was more felt than seen, though, and I am not all certain about it. The creature looked at us, seemingly grinning, and then I heard a thought in my head. Something along the lines of, "You're screwed, boy," or "Now you're trapped, boy." I couldn't decipher it was of my own making or it was the creature talking to me. Back then, I didn't really consider the latter. I just heard, felt it, and at the time I grasped the creature's immense malicious joy. To me, it was gloating, despite the overwhelming sense of wickedness and unrightfulness of the whole thing. I never felt any fear or dread, so I was not compelled to speed up as we passed it, entering a long alley with large trees almost completely covering the sky arc above us. What the hell was that? We asked each other, almost simultaneously. We compared our observations, and I realized that she was very unnerved, unlike myself, and kept frowning. I was quite eager to discuss the creature, but she declared she wanted to neither talk nor think about it anymore. I didn't want to risk upsetting her. Besides, as fascinating as the whole encounter was, I was far more excited about unfolding completely different kind of mystery which awaited me ahead, so I complied. The assuming relationship lasted for almost 4 years and left me on the brink of an emotional, mental, and physical wreckage. Yes, it all started like great big never-ending one and only true love story, but those of you who have been in a relationship with a NPD-HPD partner will definitely understand. It took me almost 2 full years to recover, and looking back, I wonder, was it all just a simple coincidence, or was this thing, this wicked creature, a harbinger, an omen, a sign? Was it there in the middle of nowhere on our path on a very special day by circumstance? Should I have listened and acted upon the ominous, threatening voice in my head which forebode my mind-boggling suffering? I wish I knew. What I know for certain is that if there is a next time and I encounter something similar again, I am going to be more thoughtful about life choices, paths I will be taking at the time, and won't ignore any red flags. Once bitten. Our folklore for the evening. Who were the Neuri licks? Some classical writers sweepingly attached a brand of werewolfery to certain races of men. The Venerable Hordiboas declared its histories that some members of the Neuri, a tribe living on the borders of the modern-day Ukraine, changed into a form of wolves for a period, and at the very least, the tribe was anthropophagi, meaning they were eaters in men, and original meaning of the word. Although it might not have been true that some Neuri were cannibals, there is little to suggest that they adopted the guise of wolves or that the wolf was an especially important creature among them. The story may well have been no more than the result of a xenophobia among neighboring races, but there may have been a grain of truth, perhaps, with regards to cannibalism. No, in terms of sources, I have cross-referenced my grandmother's stories from her journals about the supernatural, including werewolves, with Wikipedia. Alright guys, I hope you enjoyed these 2 tales with a little bit of folklore. Sorry for the little mess-ups on the folklore part. It was actually Ukrainian words that I was trying to figure out what they meant. Let's get on to story 1. Story 1, a Norwegian horse. I was thinking Kelpie, the Scottish monster horse that drags people into Loch Ness or other lakes. That's all I can. I don't think Skinwalker. I think Kelpie. I don't know. Maybe you guys think the same. Maybe you don't. I know what I know, and it seems Kelpie to me. The second story, wow, what the hell was that thing, you know? I mean, obviously this guy has got some issues in his own right, but, you know, they both saw it. It was fucked up looking. You know, who thinks one entity is a guy mounting a donkey and then the donkey mounting a dude? What the fuck? Anyway, that's Europe for you. God love them. But, I don't know. That last folklore was interesting to me. Older tribes, you know, these tribes and Eater of Man. We discussed it last night. My heritage, Mohawk Indian, means in Iroquois, the Eater of Man. Well, these Neuri were cannibals. We don't know if they really ate men. We don't really know if the Mohawk ate men. Maybe it was just some fear tactic that these tribes used. Maybe they used wolf skin, wolf head to strike fear into people. That's just my thought. Let me know what you guys think, and I've got some good stuff coming on to you tomorrow also. Have a great night, guys. Thanks for listening.